Today's chat is brought to you by the support of all our Twitch subscribers. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through the Twitch platform, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a subscriber of the FFC and gaining access to some exclusive features over in the Discord server, please be sure to visit our Twitch account and click on the subscribe button. If you're an Amazon Prime member, remember that you do have a free subscription to Twitch every month that can be used for this. And for those of you who are already subscribers, thank you again for your generosity. You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search, focus that fire. And so we come together. Join us. Join the discussion. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat. Welcome back for episode 157 of Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on February 8th over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, I want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Our topic for tonight's episode is going to be a look at the Forsaken Prince lore booklet. But first, let's run through a quick introduction of those on the show for tonight. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86. Next up, we have our own master of social media, the one and only Green-Eyed Music Lover. Green, hope you're doing well. How has the week treated you so far?
I'm good. I actually got my email on Tuesday, and I am now an affiliate on Twitch.
Nice!
So that's kind of cool. I have to finish doing all the paperwork essentially for that, but I've got that going for me, and things with the house are going well. Yeah, right? It's so cool. But
now you get to celebrate with bits.
Yeah. We'll see when that starts happening. I've got to get all that set up.
She's like, I don't know how to respond to that, so...
Not yet. I really don't know yet. Just trying to figure out how to get the whole thing up and running with all of that going on and the finances and the taxes and the stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm hoping to start streaming, and this is going to probably change with the move and everything, but hopefully start streaming a little bit more regularly in the evenings. I think that was when I tend to get the most hits, which is pretty sweet.
That is nice.
And hopefully I'll see you guys in there.
Am I allowed to host you? Because I know the last time I hosted you on Focus Fire, I got a blistering message from like 4 different people being like, why are you hosting? Don't host it.
The only thing I was worried about is I'm very good on the show about not cursing when I'm playing and streaming.
You can feel the filter being shoved down. I'm good about not...
I am professional when we do the show because I know we have a younger audience. But when I'm streaming, there's no filter. It's for mature audiences only, just FYI. If you happen to pop in, I'm just warning you. I don't hold back.
To be fair, that is why we also have the mature filter on our stream. Is because when my brother and I play, we're exactly the same. Like there is banter between the two of us the entire time.
It's not just the banter and the oh my goodness, somebody just shot me type thing. It's also the clan that I run with is not exactly the best at keeping their mouth shut. So that being said, if you would like to visit my stream sometime and listen to the shenanigans and the craziness of Hydra gaming for Destiny, please feel free to do so, and I will blister your ears.
Sorry. So as you can probably tell, it's just Green and I, which actually brings me into I have 3 announcements that I wanted to make at the top of the show instead of wait until the end, simply because I know you guys are still listening. The first one is Beard got in touch with us. There was a lot going into this, but he said that he wanted to let everyone know that he is planning on being back. He just is going to be planning on taking February off to kind of realign a couple of things and rework on his own schedule. So, for those who are worried about where Beard is these last couple episodes, that's what's going on with that. Similar with Justin. Justin is obviously, and I know we mentioned this last time, Justin is still extremely busy. We were hoping to get him on tonight, but I think his schedule just didn't cooperate with it. So that's where those two troublemakers are currently. They're just taking a break right now. Beard said that he will be back for the next Extra Lore, which is good because I don't know what we would do without Beard for the next Extra Lore, since that's kind of his
game. His baby,
his
thing I wanted that to he talks about all the time. Like he sends me music videos and music clips from this game, which granted, Nier Automata and
it's
just the Nier series, it's got some great music, but dear Lord, I love you, Beard. I love you, Beard. I can't wait to hear you talk about it.
So I told him quite bluntly, I was like, well, it's good because I have no idea what I was going to do with that without you there to help or, just do it for me because I have no exposure to that game series. But yeah, so I just wanted to give everyone a heads up on that, which also will bring me to the next point that I want everyone to be aware of. So with I think it was a couple weeks ago, we made the announcement about the Lore Network, really kind of being where I'm going to be kind of trying to focus a little bit more energy into to get a platform for different content creators and ourselves and just people who want to explore like different story analysis pieces. Hopefully we'll get a platform that's a little bit easier to find other creators that like focusing on that, just because I know Green, you had made a comment a while back about like, man, it's hard to find different people. Like it's just that's not something that there's a really good hub out there for. So we're trying to kind of build something there. With that being said, what we're going to probably be doing here, I'm still working on this, so it's not in effect currently. It's going to be going into effect pretty much as soon as I can figure out the logistics of it. But we're going to be moving the Focus Fire website into the Lore Network website. Now we will still have the URL and everything, and that's actually what I'm working on, is trying to figure out the best way to redirect that into the appropriate sites. And we also still do have the archive over on Podbean. That's not going anywhere. I love Podbean. I'm not planning on going anywhere from there. And anyone, actually, I've had this conversation, feels like a handful of times this week, but anyone who's interested in starting up a podcast or wanting some advice on how to use that, I really strongly recommend Podbean. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'm in several chats with like their admin team on a pretty regular basis, because we're on a number of different, like, not really focus groups, but they're kind of like beta testing groups and stuff like that. So we have actually like a really nice connection with the Podbean team, and they've always bent over backwards to help us. And I really appreciate them. So there will always be the Podbean site, as far as I'm concerned, for Focus Fire. Focus Fire, the articles and the show notes will now be posted to pretty much exclusively on the Lore Network, just because it's, to be blunt, kind of a pain for me to have to double post and triple post them in different places. So just for my sanity, I'm going to start just posting them on the Lore Network. Our archives have all been moved over, so all of it's already on the Lore Network's website. I'm hoping that's a little bit easier format for you guys to find that stuff, because we've designed that website with the idea of it being centered around articles. So it's going to be kind of more friendly to maneuvering through that type of information. But as always, give me some feedback on what your thoughts on that. It is the lorenetwork.com for that website. And like I said, we're hopefully going to be getting some more content on there for you guys, and also some more kind of a directory started to kind of help guide where everything is going. We also are on Twitter at the Lore Network. If you want to follow that, I know Green has done an amazing job with helping get some automatic notifications for different content creators, their stuff going live. We have, I mean, I'm just blown away by some of the stuff Green has done for us with Twitter on that. So be sure to follow that handle if you're on Twitter, and if you want a kind of a place that focuses on lore but not specifically Destiny. Kind of coming back to Destiny, we just got done recording. Well, we didn't just get done recording. We just recorded, and I just got done editing the episode, our episode for Valentine's Day. And that is going to be an episode that we recorded with Moonvald from Planet Destiny. We talked for, an hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes about the relationships within Destiny and how important some of them are, and just like how important that is, like what's going on with some of the big names, even some of the small names, like how they're portrayed, the different types of portrayal, I know Moon was really big on that. And I know Green, you and her have had this conversation, I think she said for a while off air. So it was just kind of a way to get it recorded. And yeah, that's my three big announcements for this week. Green, I saw you ask a question this week. How badly did you get yelled at?
Oh my God. I have to go find it because I forgot, because I stopped looking at Twitter on my account because of you guys. Not because it was like nobody was talking to me, quite the opposite. I had, I think, over 400 votes on this one. Let me pull it up real quick. It's still getting pings too. 49 different comments and 409 votes on how people feel about Uldren. Talk about controversial, apparently. And some of these threads are so long, so it's like, oh my gosh, you guys are killing me. I love it, but you're killing me. Thank you for doing that, by the way. I'm just joking. Feel free to talk and make comments and salty and funnies all over those poll questions, because it does make me smile when I do finally go through them. But the question of the week was, what are your feelings over Uldren, Forsaken Prince? I had three options. Hate him, he's a jerk. Don't care either way, I love him. And it was pretty stinking split almost three ways. 32% said they hated him, 28% said they loved him, and 40% said they didn't care either way. So it was, for a 400 votes, it was pretty stinking close. People are just like, he's dead, yeah, he killed Cade, whatever. And I think I remember doing a poll early after Forsaken released that asking how people felt about Uldren, and they were just so angry. So it seems like with time, people have kind of chilled out a little bit, which is good.
We've all worked through the stages of grief. We've now accepted it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's been interesting. But some of the different posts that people put on there, some people are like, I don't love him and I don't hate him, but it's not that I don't care either. I just really curious where this is leading, which is kind of the overarching comment I've gotten through a lot of these. Some people went into dissertations worth of defense. Some people went into dissertations worth of how much of a jerk he is. So it's like, all right, this is cool. It's nice to see the conversation really fired up for this character who honestly, we haven't technically seen since the video clip that dropped back in December when we did the Barons Scorn visit. And I'm trying to think, it was like right after Crimson Days dropped. That video clip where
not Crimson Days.
Dawning.
Yeah, Dawning.
There we go.
I was like,
that one.
It wasn't Crimson Days because that hasn't dropped yet.
Yeah,
I know that much.
I got Crimson Days on the brain at this point. Yeah, I'm so ready to do this PvP.
Oh my gosh,
thing.
that hoodie. You
have to play the game to do it.
I know.
You can do it. I believe in you. I might be your Crimson Days partner. I'm just weak. But when that video dropped, that was the last time we've seen Uldren since the whole thing that went down with Cade at the beginning of Forsaken. So we've had quite a bit of time, and still people are very fired up about this character, how both in love with him they are, as well as how much they hate him, as well as how much they just don't care, which is great to have the whole spectrum. So thank you guys for jumping on the poll and giving us some really great feedback and some really interesting perspectives either way, anyway. But yeah, a lot of people are like, I'm willing to give him a second chance since he may not have any of his memories. What do you think about that, Blue? Are you ready to give him a second chance?
I mean, you're talking to someone who wasn't mad at him at all to begin with, so
That's
yes.
true.
I mean, I think we actually, I feel like we had this conversation with Moon, didn't we? Like
A little bit.
Yeah, because like, and we'll definitely get into this because this is actually kind of one of the critical points of this particular lore book. The question of I just blanked on the word that I wanted. Wow, I just completely blanked on the word that I was looking for. The question of if he's culpable of what he is doing during the whole scenario. Yeah, well, I mean, I would argue that he is cognizant. I just don't know. So
if he's responsible for it?
Ultimately, I think that's the debate, because the thing is and like I said, we're definitely going to get into this probably pretty heavily, because this is a really interesting psychological debate too, right? The idea that he is hallucinating a lot of this different stuff, and if you play back the missions and stuff like that, whenever he is present and he sees Mara, like even up to the very end where the giant meatball eats him, it's up until the moment that he is actually physically being attacked by that, which was an illusion, that he, and even like actually even before then, he's been resisting. Like he was resisting opening the gate at the very end. He was, because if remember, it took Mara like his illusion screaming at him, right, to kind of push him. And the other thing is with Uldren's personality, if it was anyone other than Mara, I would not be surprised to see him basically tell him to go to hell. Like anyone other than Mara could not get him to do the things that he was doing. I don't think that's the character. Well, that's his character weakness, right? Is Mara.
Maybe the whole Cade thing going down. I mean, obviously, to get into the position where he did with the Barons and shooting Cade was the result of Ribbon. But would Uldren hesitate at hurting a Guardian? I don't think so.
Oh, no, not at all.
Does have an immense distaste for Guardians.
Well, but to be fair, there's some groundwork that explains that.
There's a reason for that. But yeah, you ready to jump in?
Yeah, sure. So let's run through our standard intro notes, and then we'll get right into it.
In our last episode of Focus Fire Chat, we discussed the legacy of yore. If you enjoy the show, please be sure to rate and, if you can, leave us a review on iTunes, Podbean, or whichever podcasting app you use to enjoy podcasts. Reviews are extremely helpful as they not only let us know what we can do better, but help others find our amazing community. To those of you who have already taken the time to leave us a review, thank you. As many of you already know, Focus Fire Chat is a cross-community gathering where the intent is to offer a week-long, in-depth view of a particular subject from within the lore of Destiny and other games. This chat begins every Tuesday morning and runs until the following Tuesday, with topics decided by the group via a poll that begins every Friday and ends on the Tuesday morning of the new chat. Every Friday, at around 10 p.m. Central, we get together to stream a high-level summary of the previous week's chat for those who are unable to participate. If you're a fan of lore in all its various forms, be sure to also check out thelorenetwork.com, where you can find a wide variety of some amazing content that covers a number of different titles and mediums. Note that this will also be the new home for the Focus Fire Chat episode note archives and articles going forward. Our next chat is going to be a discussion on the morality of a Guardian. However, as always, please be sure to weigh in on the poll this weekend to let us know which topic you want to discuss after that. Links to that poll can be found on either Twitter at FocusFireChat or within our Discord server. With that being said, here's Green with a high-level summary of tonight's topic.
In the past, we have spent much time looking at the history and situations surrounding various characters, teasing out their humanity and motivations. In the book Forsaken Prince, we see Uldren from a closer perspective. Not from a Guardian's view, but from those who are closest to him. From Joylan, his, friend, to Mara, We see happier times, and then his descent into the deception of Riven and his utter longing to please his sister, no matter the cost. The crux of Uldren is this. His sister is his world, and his addiction lies in skittering past, brushing its whiskers, leaping away from possible death.
Before we jump into the information and thoughts that the community had about the Forsaken Prince, however, let's have a quick chat about this week's Lost Lore. So, for Lost Lore, I was just kind of thinking about that, and I think Lost Lore, honestly, there's so much that you can unpack from this particular book. I'm actually kind of at a loss because of the overabundance of options for where we're going with this one, but I want to maybe kind of focus a little bit, and this was probably going to transition pretty seamlessly into what we were kind of just talking about, is the corruption, I guess.
Okay, well, the Riven.
Yeah, well, what were you thinking?
Well, I was just thinking his connection with Mara.
The connection with
ties
Mara.
That ties back into Mara Senna, but we can totally do the corruption because I actually, thanks to some friends who were streaming earlier, I rewatched the clip where he gets the shard from the Traveler.
Oh yeah, where Mara has the creepy smile.
Yeah, I mean, God, that the Riven version of Mara is terrifying.
Yeah. Just
when people started like pulling that image out, like I was just like, oh God, no, please tell me this is not what they did. It's not just the teeth, it's the eyes. It's so bad. But no, in that scene, just as he's getting ready to get the shard from the Traveler, all the Elixni have come out, or the Fallen have come out, and are like they're like with him, and he's like whatever lording over the top of them. But he hesitates to fire at the shard, and that to me in and of itself is incredibly interesting, because the Riven Mara has to push him to do that and fire at it,
right? Because if you remember, the Riven Mara, or the whatever, whoever is casting this illusion of Mara, which I mean, I think it's pretty clear that it's Riven. I know that there's still some like slight debate on that. But like this dark Mara, for lack of better term, has to push him to do a lot of the decisions. Like,
yes,
there are when it comes to with Uldren, he's a big talker, and he can back it up. Like, I don't mean that negatively. Like, he can back up a lot of his threats. Like, Uldren is not a weak character at all. But Uldren is very big on flash. Like, he's very big on perception and using perception to further his goals. Like, you get a sense that he doesn't have a problem kind of talking his way out of things, especially now. Like, in the Mara Senna and before, you also see the physicality of Uldren and the willingness to take a punch and to be able to take a punch. And I think that is very, very integral to his character as well. But
as well as his overall personality in general.
Yeah, he's willing. I mean, he's willing to not just. I mean, he's willing to take punishment for everything, especially Mara. Mara is like I said, Mara is his blind spot, weak spot, whatever you want to call it. But the thing is like when it comes to time to actually do some of these things, it seems like there is a part of him that is still kind of pushing back. And I'm right there with you, Green, because I think that is kind of an indication that there is still he's not 100% sold that this is the right thing to do, but then Mara is right there screaming at him to do it. And it's like, and this kind of goes into one of the first entries is the length of a chain. The entire concept of that title, the reason that's called that is because he makes a comment about how you can't know the length of a chain until you throw yourself against it. And with Mara, every time he throws himself against the chain, which is where the build up for the first like half of this book,
The entire story, or the entire point of the first half, is him going out to find the Black Garden and ultimately try to find the heart of the Black Garden. And he's doing that in opposition to Mara's direct orders not to. They have been forbidden to go to the Black Garden, and Uldren goes behind her back and coerces Julian, who we're going to talk about here in a second as well, coerces Julian to go with him. And the entire reason he's doing this is basically to get a reaction from Mara, because Mara is that perfect politician at this point. She's that queen, that ice queen, if you will. And also he makes a comment about, like, he doesn't know, he himself doesn't know how much is him and how much is Uldren in reaction to Mara. Like, is there an Uldren without a Mara? You see this a lot in, like, fantasy, like, duo characters, where there is always the stronger one and the weaker one, and then there's always that conflict between the two of, like, who are they by themselves? That's a very big conflict that you see a lot of times with characters that are portrayed in a group, right? And Uldren's no different. I mean, really, honestly, that's what everyone in reality goes through too. It's like that whole concept of, like, who am I without this, fill in the blank, significant other, parent, brother, sister, whatever it is. You all will have that same question. And there's always that combat of how long is this chain that attaches us? Whether or not you throw yourself against it is a different situation, but...
To be fair, if I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate, Uldren should have known that the quote-unquote Dark Mara was not actually Mara because of some of the lines, specifically the "Oh brother mine," the "Oh blank mine" type line that we've seen throughout all the lore that relates back to Ahamkara. Now, playing devil's advocate the other way, Uldren desperately wanted his sister back.
Right. And
period.
Also,
no matter what.
I would also argue that by the time the corruption actually made itself manifest in the form of Mara to Uldren, I would argue that he was probably already past the point of rationally deciding that wasn't Mara and paying attention to the nuanced way of saying things. Because if you're like, in the lore book, we actually see the first point at when he gets infected, and it's very insidious. It's very subtle. It's very, very slow in getting its hooks into him. But it seems like once those hooks are set, like once he becomes the victim of that corruption, it escalates quickly. And like the whole thing is, his armor is, his armor is not perfect. I mean, no one's armor is perfect, but he does not have the armor that Mara has against the Ahamkara, because the Ahamkara operate on desire. They are drawn to it. That is their sustenance. That is the how they survive, is they consume that and they convert reality into the desire. They are by definition paracausal in and of themselves. And so his desire in anyone who has lost something important, whether that be a loved one or, I mean, hell, even something like super material, like a cell phone or, keys or something, like any degree. If you've ever lost something, you know what this feels like, right? And this is magnified times infinite number, because not only did he lose a sister, which is an immense blow, he lost a friend and a family member that has been with him for ever since he can remember. Like, you have to keep that in mind too. We don't know how long Mara and Uldren have been together. We really don't. We can get an idea maybe, but then you also have to take into account the fact that we don't know how long they were in the Awoken, I can never say the word, distributary. We don't know how long. I don't. Whatever. If I don't think about it, I think I can get it. We don't know how long they were there, right? But we do know that the entire time, Uldren has never been far from Mara. They are connected at all times, pretty much. And so to have that suddenly ripped away, and it's also added because we saw within the Awoken, or I think it was the Awoken of the Reef, it might have been Maracena, Catabasis is the entry. Mara didn't warn anybody that this plan was going into effect. And so that is also infinitely painful And, and so he doesn't know that she has a plan. He just is like, she's gone. She's just ripped away. No explanation. It's reality too. And when you lose something, you lose someone, there's often no closure in that. And that pain is something that is immensely palpable. And so when you have that corruption that feasts on desire, attach itself to someone who just lost something that important, it's not really a surprise to me that corruption was able to wiggle its way into the mind that easily. But it's like, I don't know, like because reading the lore book, you don't actually see, like, you don't even see, like, you hear Mara speaking well before he ever sees her. And when he does hear her speaking, for a large percentage of time, it's with the same sensation that there's that niggling mention of, like, starlight, that conversation via starlight, the hum of starlight or whatever. And it's always with that sensation that she this illusion communicates with him too. So, like, I mean, I don't think it's a matter of Uldren just not being super aware of things. I think it's a matter of he is so far gone at the point that he sees these hallucinations. Because in game, it seems like it's very quick. I get, like, we don't really see the process from, because the other thing to remember here is that this has been going on since the Taken King.
Right.
So for us, when we see him in game, with Forsaken, it's like, back to back to back to back. And we're like, okay, that's pretty quick. But for him, the corruption has been trying to get a hold of him since he crashed on Mars, basically.
A little bit afterwards, I think.
Well, like, see, and I don't know, because he says the despair starts setting in when he's carrying the crow back to his ship after the second crash.
Right, but my whole point on that is that when was Riven taken? Well, when was Riven taken and been able to get his claws into Uldren? And that is like something we don't have clarification. We know it happened after Taken King. That's
right. We know. Well, I mean, there's a lot of counterpoints to it too, because, like, we know that Riven would have been taken pretty close to the time of Taken King as well because of who took her. But the other possibility is that who said that Riven was taken when she corrupted him? I mean, Riven has wanted to kind of strike back. Like,
that's an interesting line of thought.
Because, see, I never connected Riven being taken as being a component of her corrupting Uldren, because she's been after Uldren since she first encountered Uldren.
Yeah.
Because Uldren. So to kind of explain that really quick, Uldren is the reason that Riven is with the Awoken.
Yes.
That was, I think that's actually in in this booklet. Okay.
It is.
I'm like, I all these lore books are starting to blend together, which is a great problem to have, but it's also kind of annoying sometimes.
I'm pretty sure it is, at least.
Riven is one of the unique treasures that Uldren discovers when the Awoken first come back into our system. And he brings her when she is still pretty much an infant, or a I don't even know what the word would be for it, an Ahamkarleen, like a baby Ahamkara.
Yeah. And apparently it's in Awoken of the Reef, not this book.
Okay. That
Getting
makes
yelled
sense.
at very loudly in chat.
Okay, so it's Telic. Okay. I'd say for my defense, I did say I couldn't remember if it was in this book or not. It is Uldren, though. So Uldren brings Riven to Mara to present to her as a kind of a unique power source, which is it gets kind of explained why Mara is so fascinated with Riven and the Ahamkara later, and why Mara allows the Reef to be so heavily involved in the Great Ahamkara hunt. But, like, when Uldren presents Riven to Mara, it is made clear that Mara takes Riven and keeps it separate from all the Awoken. And there is a scene in which Uldren comes to see Mara and Riven is wrapped around her neck, and there's a perking up of Riven. Like, Riven recognizes Uldren, like, for a number of different things. And honestly, if you really want to play devil's advocate, you could possibly argue that this has been Riven playing a long game, because, again, who introduced it to Mara? Uldren. We don't know how Uldren found Riven. I mean, it depends on how far down the rabbit hole you want to go there, but there is a small possibility, and I don't think this is the case, but there is the possibility that Riven has had its hooks into Uldren from day one. Now, that being said, I don't think that's the case, but it is a possibility that we have to keep into consideration, because again, we never saw how Riven and Uldren kind of interconnected, and what happened between that point and between him getting it to Mara. There's a lot, and given the Ahamkara, they're shapeshifters, we don't know exactly how that all works.
True.
Yeah, and Dino in chat, I mean, it's like, Riven has kept tabs on Uldren. Like, the relationship between Riven and Uldren is something that I think should not be downplayed. And I don't think it's as simple as, not that you were saying this, Green, but I don't think it's as simple as, oh, she's taken and now she's, because, I mean, there is a connection between the two of them, because otherwise how did she get a hold of Uldren in the first place? And that's what chat's talking about right now, is like the imprint being a psychic connection, the idea of young animals imprinting, on the first creature they see, which is often the case with like avians and stuff like that. There's a lot of different possibilities there.
The thing that I wonder, though, is if Riven has had connection to Uldren for so many years, she was only moved to actually do that when she was taken, or at least directed to do that when she was taken.
Right.
So
now,
we don't.
Yeah.
There's going to be a little bit of flexibility, at least on that respect, because we don't know what Riven would have done had she not been taken. But...
Right, and I think the other thing too, to kind of go just a little bit further down that rabbit hole that I was introducing, is so to remember Ahamkara are drawn to desire, and if you like, and this will kind of segue back into the beginning of the book here, if you remember what Uldren's kind of stance and kind of his worldview, even from day one for Uldren, it's always been what? It's been a desire to have Mara look at him, to have Mara treat him as an equal, or whatever. And it's not like a nefarious, like trying to undermine Mara. He genuinely wants that sibling relationship to be kind of an equals, and Mara just doesn't, like, Mara doesn't operate that way. Like, that's just, that's expecting something that is just not going to happen. But that desire, I keep going back to this fact that desire is a core facet of Uldren's personality. And so to me, it would not come as a surprise to find that Riven, actually, that is what Riven is after, is that festering desire, that, because it also depends on how, I don't want to say shamanistic, but how supernaturally mystical we get with this idea. But like, in the same component, that's something that's like an aged cheese or an aged piece of meat, or whatever, the longer it sits and ages, sometimes the better it tastes. Well, what's better than a desire that's been festering within something for, arguably maybe thousands, if not tens of thousands of years? Maybe Riven's, and it's just like, there's a lot of different directions that particular piece of the story could go and not really affect anything here. Like that, I mean, that could explain actually quite a bit, and it wouldn't require a lot of rewriting, or it wouldn't require any rewriting. But kind of talking about that, to use that kind of transition to kind of talk about Uldren's past and like who Uldren is and all that, ironically, it's by the people that he keeps company with that we see a lot of who Uldren is, and one of those main characters really is Jolyon. And I know you had Jolyon down as someone to kind of, who is Jolyon? Like, why do we care about this Jolyon character that we keep mentioning?
I mean, he makes some pretty freaking sweet, like, guns and swords and stuff.
If you like the Lord of Wolves, you should like Jolyon.
If you like the Black Talon, you should like Jolyon.
Yeah.
I mean, Lord of Wolves is one thing, but Black Talon is one of those weapons right now that is basically a raise lighter but void, which is nice. It's nice to have something like that back again. But he is basically Uldren's unofficial best friend, official best friend. That is what we're going with at this point.
Stay tuned for the episode on the 14th for this entire explanation.
Yes, because there is
There's a gentle difference of opinions between the two of us.
There is the possibility that Julian and Uldren were more than just friends.
Yes,
and a lot of it is based. Yeah, it's hinted at in some of the cards. Just like a lot of our quote unquote relationships that are just not blatant in Destiny, there are things hinted that they could be, but we don't know for sure. So it's the maybe not. They're close. We do know that, but how close? Anyway, Julian is kind of his go-to man. He's the one who gets Uldren cons him into doing a lot of stuff that he probably shouldn't be doing, including going to the Black Garden. And honestly, at this point in Length of a Chain, because if we're just kind of stepping into the book, it almost seems like Uldren is similar to Cade in the fact that he's like, I got a plan, let's do this. Although he's not as vocally crazy about it. He's just more like, I got a plan. Julian, my man, you and I are going to go take the Black Garden.
He's like much more suave than Cade is.
Yeah.
Cade's like,
oh yeah.
Cade's like, gloaty. Like he's not even gloating. I don't know. Like he's like,
Cade's kind of bumbling.
Yeah, there's a degree, but he's also kind of like the jester. Like he's dead. He's serious, but he can't help but make jokes the entire time. Whereas Uldren is like the exact same like thought pattern, but the attitude is a lot more. The only word that comes to mind is slick.
Mm-hmm.
He feels like it's like polished and unpolished of the same personality.
Yeah. It's just very weird. It's weird to see him talk like this too, because we've always gotten these biting remarks from him, and this one, it's not so much that. It's just so funny. Do you want to just read this one?
Yeah, the part one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you want to act it, or do you just want to read it?
No, because I felt I did so much of the acting when I would write. So for the record, I recorded these. These are this is part of the audio supplements that we do have on the YouTube channel. I think I recorded these, the Forsaken Prince. I think this is one of the only ones that I actually managed to get around to recording. Green, again, big shout out to Green for all the. I think who else was it?
And
Wicked
Potato.
and Potato
and Wicked. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, awesome job on these. But yeah.
Totally. But okay, so this is Length of a Chain, Part 1. Julian, my man, Uldren whispers, you and I are going to take the Black Garden. Oh yeah? Julian, Till of the Ratches, famous among crows, sniper, scout, and teller of tales, lies full sprawl, prone at Uldren's side. So this is the whole moment where we're like, wait a second, what's going on with these two? Going back to the card. The scrubbed-down length of a supremacy rifle snugged against his shoulder nearly doubles his height. I heard you and I were going to float Saturn in a bathtub. I'm serious, Joel. And you'll be dead serious if you go to Mars. Hardy har har. Target range 2,900 meters. Wind and rotation. Wind 21 kilometers per hour from your 3 o'clock. You are 2 degrees off spin north. I'm going, though. I really am. You've got to come. You'll never live it down if you miss this one. I'll never live anything down if I'm dead. Shot ready. Send it, Uldren says. The supremacy booms and kicks into Julian's shoulder. Uldren doesn't even bother to check that it's a bullseye. You've been with me on all the big ones, Joel. I can't do it without you. Besides, he opens his hand to reveal the ejected cartridge snatched from midair, Cobra quick. If we don't do it, some Guardian will. And the next thing you know, Mara will be inviting them in to do crow work. Joel rolls onto his right flank to regard Uldren. The master of crows grins his winningest. Julian, Till the Ratches, squints and slaps the mag release one-handed. Uldren catches it. You're a lot like your sister, Julian sighs. Except that when she plays dirty, she doesn't smile so big. I got all the charm in the family, Uldren. Uldren waits patiently for Joel to work the bolt and eject the chambered round. He usually wins this little game. Usually. But sometimes Joel surprises him. Nobody's ever been inside the garden. Imagine what we'll find. Nameless horrors? They're all nameless when nobody's named them, Joel. Nobody's ever been. Isn't that enticing? No, because your sister's forbidden it, Uldren. That he says cheerfully, is how I know it's worth doing. And besides, the Awoken people will thrill at another tale of his narrow survival. Mars never really understood how much heroes matter to people. A queen is an indispensable thing, but a hero? Now you know what he wants, when he's lost, when he's won. So that is the first one of that one. That, I mean, it's definitely a different view of Uldren than we've seen before. And granted, my reading of it is probably a little bit more happy sounding than Uldren would necessarily be, but Uldren and Joel have an interesting relationship where they're just like, hey, you want to come do this? You know you do. You know you do. You want to be there right beside me as I break into the Black Garden, even though my sister doesn't want me to. It's just fun.
I double dog dare you.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's two boys on the playground. Two boys on the playground getting into trouble. But essentially, Length of a Chain Part 2, Joel calls him cocky and kind of essentially says, yeah, we'll do this kind of thing. And it's more of an insight look at how Julian is as far as his personality and whether or not he's going to agree to it and why he thinks Uldren is doing it, which is nice. It's an insight into him a little bit, not necessarily as much Uldren in that one.
Well, because Uldren in the latter half of it, it's Uldren kind of mentioning, how it says he wants his sister's approval. He knows and accepts that, but he wants her approval for something she did not anticipate, did not plan or foresee, and did not account for. He wants her to thank him with surprise, and then that goes into the purpose of the title. And he's like the entire concept of like, do the people love him because of him or because he is, the human face, if you will, of the queen.
Right.
And I think that's, and then, yeah, finally it closes. Either he is truly free of his sister, free to choose to stand at her side, to choose of his own free will, or the chain as long as managed to run.
Right. And then we get into At the Gate, which, the first line makes me smile every time I read it. Give Uldren Sov the chance to torment a guardian, and he'll take it faster than you can shout, Rasputin shot the traveler, an opinion base he lobs into guardians' minds whenever he can. AKA the entire writing team poking fun at the lore community. And the fact that theory has been around stupid long. It's so funny. It's like, I love you, writing team, for throwing that in there. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It took me so many takes to get that recorded without me cracking.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, he hates the Traveler, which we knew. And a part of that is also because Mara hates the Traveler, and they saw everything that happened with Savin. Trying to remember his name.
Yes, Savin. Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and also Uldren's personal problem with them too is like the ability that they just don't care. Like they don't care about what they're doing, and they don't have to. It's like he mentions, like every time he gets into a gunfight, he wonders what it must be like to do any of this without any sheer raving terror. That is something that Uldren personally can't it just eats at him.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that this one shows is they're at the gate at the Black Garden, or they're approaching it essentially at this point. Uldren and Joel are there together, and the battle to get to the gate is they've gotten separated, and you see Uldren kind of panic a tiny bit. Now, granted, it's not a large panic or anything like that, but he's calling on Joel to come back, essentially. Like, he doesn't know where he's at. They've gotten separated. There's a goblin in his face. There's just this battle going on. But then the bullet cracks past.
I love At the Gate Part 2. I have a princely idea.
Mm-hmm. So
there goes the ego.
I mean... That's okay. I love that line, and I also really hate that line. You want to know why? Because Uldren has never, in his any of the cutscenes that we've seen him in, been that I have got a princely idea. It's very pretentious, and I've never seen, like, it doesn't, it makes me mad. It's not my Uldren.
It's
just
not
a
my
little
Uldren.
bit. It's not my Uldren. But, yeah.
So, to be fair, though, the idea that he comes up with is
Yeah.
pretty intelligent. Like, it's pretty
Right.
good.
He's a smart guy. It's just that line. Just that one line. I'm sorry, but just that line hurts me. But you take this one. I don't think I could go on without talking about that line some more.
Do you want me to read At the Gate Part 2 or Through the Gate?
Go through the gate.
Okay. So this is right after the line where he is explaining to Julian that he has an idea. And so it's through the gate. They crawl belly down across the Martian desert like worms. Active camouflage ponchos break up their outlines. The roaming Cabal harvesters growl on the horizon. For the last 8 hours, Julian has been picking off Cabal infantry with his rifle, fleeing the eruption of automatic counterfire. Uldren has listened on cracked battle nets as mightier weapons are invoked and brought to bear. The war machine is now inflamed, swollen with outrage. Julian touches Uldren's ankle. Fingertips drum out code. How far? 50 meters, Uldren whispers. If the Vex know we're here, they haven't. The air prickles. Subsonic groans of power stir in the sand. Something mighty awakens above them. Never mind, Uldren mutters. The Vex have now reacted. He throws off his poncho, rising with revolver and deflection grenade in his fist, screaming challenge. Jutting from the Martian desert before them is the canted, fringed hoop that is the Black Garden's gate, huge enough to swallow a fallen skiff. It thrills with infinite energy. Out of that aperture emerges the behemoth silhouette of a Vex Gatelord, metal and mind crashing together, self-assembling, ready to defend the secret place. The Vex are born here in the sense of baptism, consecrated to the service of some terrible purpose that the machines found within. "Hey, big guy," Uldren shouts. "Over here!" Calmly, carefully, Julian Till the Ratchus begins to fire his rifle straight up into the sky. The reports of the Supremacy's huge cartridges spill out across the dunes. The Gatelord towers above them. Uldren whoops and hip-fires a couple rounds into the sand at its feet. "Can you dance, sir?" he bellows. "Have you got the footwork?" Inside the Vex entity, there are mighty algorithms constructing a model of this merely temporal place, calculating potential threat, weighing the utility of weapons discharge against the good that power might do elsewhere. This computation is the only reason Uldren's still alive. The bone mic, tuned to Cabal tactical channels, wakes up at Uldren's throat. They have localized the sound of Julian's rifle and are responding. He hollers up at the Vex behemoth and starts to jig. "It's going to rain on Mars. It's monsoon season in Meridian Bay. Did you see the forecast?" He grabs Joel by the hand and pulls. Together they sprint towards the Gatelord and its charge. The Vex machine must know what's coming, but it has to weigh the certainty of Cabal against the tiny possibility of these microbiotic motes slipping into the gate. The Gatelord raises a weapon to obliterate them. They skid into the gate's threshold, and Uldren activates the deflection grenade so hard he nearly breaks his thumb. A perfect sphere of topologically defective space-time blinks into being around him. He holds Julian close, and together they calm their breath. The barrier is impenetrable, but it will not last long. Until then, there is only so much air to breathe. Outside, the full fury of a Cabal fleet carrier lands on the Gatelord. When the barrier lands, the Gatelord is dead, and Uldren and Julian are no longer on Mars.
Can I just say I love the fact that one of Uldren's weapons is literally his taunts and voice.
Yes, yeah.
That is like, wow. Like, yes. Mr. Snark himself literally taunts a person
It's gonna
to
rain
death.
on Mars.
Oh my god, the bone mic. It's so good. It's so clever. It's also a little crazy in my mind, but it's like, all right, only Uldren can get away with literally taunting something to death. And then they are in the garden.
Yes, and the LSD drugs start kicking in because wow.
Everything grows here. Look at your nails.
It just,
yeah, I mean,
it's just like reading someone portraying a really bad trip. Like Julian is so out of sorts by everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like oh my gosh, like the descriptions are just so great. You have like a canopy of white tongues. Then you have
Uldren's nails curling around, reaching back to its root.
Yeah. And then it's got the vines that try to coil around his wrists, tiny teeth shaped like letters saw at his skin.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like okay, are these actually like thorns, or are these like, what are these?
This is what I really want to talk about. Is they're in the Black Garden. We were in the Black Garden. They're hallucinating. We didn't hallucinate.
That's the problem about hallucinations, isn't it?
Uh-huh. So it's like, okay, did we hallucinate when we went into the Black Garden the first time when we killed, what was it, what was it called? It was basically the glowing mass that went into the different Vex giant minotaurs, the 3 different minotaurs. You remember that, the final mission of the D1 vanilla?
What
was
Black
it
Heart.
called? Yes, thank you, the Black Heart.
Because that was us actually killing the Black Heart, which Uldren also, right. I like Uldren's analysis of what the Black Heart is later in this book as well.
Right, which is coming up, isn't it?
Yes, it's after the heart is that entry, or after the heart 2, I believe. It's after he returns with the flowers, which then are later used to create Queen's Foil, I believe, is, if I remember that connection there.
Asphodelias,
yes. This is also, chat, I'm not going, okay, for the record, I am not going to read the Cabal voice the same way that I recorded it, because apparently, unbeknownst to me, I gave the Cabal a Cockney accent. I don't even know how I did that. Like, but I'm not gonna, chat's like, I will hate you if you don't do the right accent. Like, I don't know what the accent is.
I don't remember, but I did. That was like 4 months ago at this point.
Yeah, it was a while back.
Oh my gosh.
Specifically the accent they're supposed to have. So yeah, for those who are confused about this, I think this was On the Hunt was the entry that I was reading, and it's just like, you read it and it's just so easy
right up in me eyes.
Right up in me eyes.
Practically shaving me bristles. Now I give it a lisp. It's fine. We'll just keep moving on. Poor Cabal.
Oh my god. But yeah, I recorded it, and apparently I gave it a decent. I don't know. I don't want to say I gave it a decent Cockney accent, because I might piss off someone who actually knows what that means.
Was recognizably Cockney.
Yeah. I gave it the accent that I thought it made sense, and apparently a lot that was the correct one. So, anyways, On the Hunt is basically, so like, sorry, to go back, in the garden, we see Uldren and Julian in the garden. Like, this is when they first kind of got in. Julian is flipping out and not comfortable at all. And Uldren is just like, the best way I can explain is he's on cloud 9. Like, he is just having the time of his life. And he just gets like, he starts becoming obsessed, I think is the best term for it. He says he cannot let this place be killed. He cannot let it be looted and overthrown like everything else that doesn't fit into the narrow binary dogmas of the Traveler's undead warriors. Excitement seizes him, and he runs ahead, sloshing through the muck, laughing aloud. And Uldren's like, or Julian's like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And Uldren just, what are you looking for? And Uldren basically is like, he doesn't know. And like, again, I think this kind of taps into the idea of remembering that they are immortals. Like, they have been for so long immortal. Uldren has existed for so long at this point that the idea of finding something that he doesn't know would actually probably be something of a spark of adrenaline or something of that nature, especially given his personality of wanting to be the scout, wanting to find the unknown. He likes being on the edge of that. And so finding the Black Garden, I think, is really actually, that is where the thrill comes from, because there's a scene earlier in this entry where he flips over a beetle, and the beetle is just a shell. Like, it makes no sense. Julian pulls up a plant, and its roots are metallic threads of a circuit board. Like, this place does not make sense, and it defies logic. And to a person who, for the longest time, has searched for something unknowable or something that, you know, defies the logic of the system, that is a gold mine in and of itself. And that's why I think he kind of starts looking at this like he can't let this be destroyed. He starts getting, for the lack of a better word, he starts getting infected with the desire to keep this place alive, which gets expanded on in On the Hunt, because they find out that there was a war party. Now, Uldren gets really pissed about this, and not for reasons that would probably make sense to an Awoken. He gets annoyed because they are damaging the garden. Like, it's like Uldren has taken over protection of this. Like, you know, it's like, I don't know. But then you also get the idea, or you start getting the sense that I think Julian is the one that's like brain stain, which is a really weird thing to say. But basically, you start hearing, they said that start hearing the wind whispering, soft words with just the beginnings of syntax, the cadence almost musical. And so Julian is actually paying attention more so than Uldren is, because Julian actually recognizes this potential infection by a contagious idea. And this is something that we have seen the Vex do before. We saw the Vex do this way back in Destiny 1 with the Ishtar Academy. This was the reason that they brought in the War Mind to help filter and scrub their brains when they were dealing with the infection, or the situation of the multiple instances of themselves, because they will infect via contagious idea. We've seen this with the Vault of Glass. We've seen this with this is a very common Vex-like thing. But Uldren, and I think this is telling too within this book, because Uldren pushes ahead. He ignores that. And if you think about that, that is going to be very important to remember, that he ignores the beginnings of the warning of an infectious idea, the contagious idea, because that's what we see what happened with him and Riven. This is how Riven gets control of Uldren. He infects their brain, or infects its brain. And that's where we come into contact with the Cabal Legionary, where basically Uldren sneaks up on him, and you learn that Uldren can speak Ularant, which is the Cabal tongue, which I find rather interesting. But that's where the Cockney comment comes in, because the Legionary apparently doesn't even really try to fight him. He just is like, he's like, you know, he basically is convinced that he's in hell. And Uldren kind of gets in an argument with him, and then you find out that no, the Cabal didn't come here. They were actually abducted. They were actually brought here kind of against their will. And they have infected this legionary with seeds, I guess is the best way to kind of explain this. And it's just like, and this is where the Cabal actually kind of commits suicide. He releases his helmet. So the thing with the Cabal is they can't survive without the helmet, because that helmet enables a pressure seal, because they're the way that their biology is designed, or the way their biology is, they have to have a certain pressure, and they also don't really breathe oxygen, which is not a surprise, but
they breathe rocket fuel.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad.
That mission.
That
mission was so much fun.
It until the ending, where you're kind of like, I'm like, I feel kind of dirty about doing this, but so anyways, he pops his helmet and he dies because he doesn't have his helmet on and he can't breathe. And then basically what you see is it says beneath the layer of gel, which is a ring of black gel, which is the basically the pressure rocket fuel gel. Beneath the layer of gel, the whole surface of his skull has the pitted texture of a strawberry. Thousands of tiny seeds glisten in the Cabal's flesh. Uldren brushes the skin in fascination. And this is where Julian kind of pops back in. He's like, I really don't like the expression on your face. Which is like one of the best things to say to somebody. And then kind of like, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what is going on with this legionary, because Uldren makes a comment that they grew the secrets in him. And so it's like, okay, so are these seeds like, and we had mentioned the plant with the microphybic roots. So it begs the question of like, what exactly are they doing? We do know that the Vex have an obsession with the confluence, which is basically making everything the same. So I mean, this might be a glimpse at what exactly that means. But like we just don't know. We also have like Julian kind of who gives a rat. I love it. Julian is like the pragmatist of the pair.
Definitely. But I mean, we talk about seeds the last one. We're going to talk about flowers in the next one.
Right. And I think that's the thing is like the Black Garden really, I mean, we've anyone who's played Destiny from like the beginning or who's played the original campaign in D1 has probably picked up on this. The Black Garden, everything that deals with the Black Garden is obviously going to be actually everything that deals with the Vex for a large part of it is going to be a plant like reference. Like there's a lot of gardening, pruning, and it makes, to a degree, it makes a lot of sense, but it does, like, even here we see that. We see, one of the weird things that they saw was the plants, the beetles in the plants. Now we're talking about the seeds that have been embedded into the Cabal's head. And Green, you're correct. After the heart brings us to what Uldren brings back from the garden. And do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, I love the asphodelias, which the asphodelia plant is also the plant that the Techians use to make queen's foil. That being said, the Awoken people essentially use something that Uldren found in the Black Garden to make our as well potion, so we can see and go into the Ascendant Realm. We talk about the hallucinations a couple cards back. That, in some respects, is also what this is. But he brings it back. The other things that you see that in this card that are a little interesting is that the Queen's retinue is a little afraid of him. They put up with him because he's the brother, but they kind of think of him as a madman. And Asphodelia there's a few references that match up with Asphodelia. There is actually an Asphodelia metal band, which is kind of cool. Rock on. And then asphodel, which is where the asphodelia name comes from. The root, there's an actual asphodel flower, and it's a type of lily. Now, flower language, fun thing, this means my regrets follow you to the grave.
Oh, flower language. That's a rabbit hole I have not been down in a long time.
So those are two fun little rabbit holes to go down. Maybe not necessarily the metal band reference, but totally the flower language reference to asphodels.
Well, did you, real quick, did you mention where the flower was supposed to be from, the asphodel?
Within the Black Garden, or the initial, like the original asphodel?
The original.
No, I don't. I don't have that off the top of my head.
It's the flower that grows in the Elysian Fields.
Oh, there you go.
So it's an immortal.
Greek.
Yeah, it's an immortal. Which, surprise, the Vex in Greek mythology. What? Yeah, and it's actually a really weird looking flower. Like it looks. I don't know. I don't think it looks a lot like a flower. It looks more like a corn stalk. But whatever. It's apparently it usually has it's called long. It says long slender leaves and flowers borne on a spike. On a spike.
Yes.
Sorry, that's red versus
blue.
blue.
No, you're good. Yep. I know. I just let you have your moment.
Yeah. So it's the field of Asphodel, or the Asphodel Meadows, is a section of the underworld where indifferent or ordinary souls who lived a life of neither good or evil are sent to live after death.
Yep. At the end of that card, Mara pulls Uldren aside and asks if he saw it, if he saw the Black Heart. So Mara is interested in what he's got going on. She wants to know everything that he saw because Mara loves information, and that's kind of the crux of her power is within information. But in After the Heart Part 2, he kind of goes in and discusses everything that happens. Mara's like asking, did you see the heart? Like it is something that she really, really wants to know, but he can't exactly relay that information. His memories become confused. He was running through a thorny grove, and the branches and prickles were tearing at his cheeks. Huge wet fruit slapped against his shoulders and detonated in overripe pulp. So it's like, all right, you're in an actual garden now in your head. So their hallucinations kind of continue in this card when he was trying to remember, essentially. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else in this card that's super important. He doesn't really answer the question very well, but the way he does answers, the Vex infest the place. He gives them something they crave. It grows them towards what they want to be. It grows the Vex towards something they want to be, which is kind of like, all right, the Vex are growing both directions.
Wait, the garden grows into the past and the future?
Mm-hmm.
Dun, dun, dun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is also... Did you talk about the crows and the clothes dryer?
No. Where I don't remember that line.
It's after the heart.
Line?
After the heart part 2.
Yeah.
He's sitting. So she asked him if he saw the heart, and he's like,
laundry room.
Yeah. He gets snaps.
He's hallucinating.
I just love the fact that like this is a bad acid trip for Uldren. Like this is just it resurfacing, and like the explanation is. He was in an apartment block. He remembers that. He was sitting in the laundry room, a place with black and white checkered tile floor, watching his crows tumble over and over in the dryer, black feathers flurrying, beaks clacking. A big old female cabal sat in the tub to his left, scrubbing her back with a wire brush. A Vex goblin with the face of Alice Lee in its stomach stood behind the counter selling detergent. Uldren, she said, you've got a hole in you. The cabal grunted in agreement. He looked down at himself, and there was a hole in his hand, black and perfectly round. His dryer ran out of time, but his crows were still wet.
Yeah. So...
It's like, wait, what? I had to read that like 5 times. I'm like, what just happened?
Oh my god, yeah, definitely. It's just like, Uldren is just a mess. And the fact that he remembers this so vividly... is both impressive. I mean, it's impressive that he remembers as much as he does at this point with everything that happened apparently in his head with this. But that takes us to the Julian card. Well,
sorry. Excuse me. The other thing is, this is also where Uldren makes a comment about what the black heart does.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tripwire. So if you go further down into the card, Mark basically calls him out. He's like, you didn't answer the question. And he responds with, whatever the heart of that place is it's a seed, I think. A seed left behind to grow, like a node of glimmer, which that's interesting, or a tripwire, bait to attract those who seek out and destroy what they don't understand. And it goes on, it says, so that's the end of his quote. But then it goes further and it says, bait for guardians, bait to mark some milestone in the traveler's recovery. I'm like, that it doesn't confirm anything, first off, but it conforms with an idea of what I kind of personally see in the Black Garden. Is it's a tripwire, like exactly what he's saying. It's a tripwire that is going to activate the trap. Because only when they get to the point where they have achieved that particular ability to destroy that thing, then it signifies to something that you see this a lot of times in some of the like older science fiction stuff where you have like the defense of an intelligent design. They'll have like cedar colonies and stuff like that. And what they'll do is they'll do something similar. They'll have a tripwire component that, once this species reaches X technology, whoever seeded that system will come in and quote unquote farm it. That's a very common concept within science fiction. And so for me, that actually makes a lot of sense that they've kind of baited a trap to wait to see when this thing goes off. And now the question is, well, if that's the case, what's the trap that this was a tripwire for?
Right. We kind of get a little bit of his ideas of what he thinks it is in the next card when we get to Julian.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was catching up on.
Yep. Yeah, just talking about the different hierarchies.
Cultural influences.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and so this is where we kind of really get a really good look at Julian's character. Like,
we also get,
just,
I mean, we get Uldren too still. But...
Right. But I mean, like, Julian, it really kind of puts Julian in, not necessarily a bad light, but it puts a light on Julian and kind of points out the fact that Julian really, not to be insulting to him, but he's really just simple. Like, he doesn't want complexity. He just wants to do his job. Like, he's just
good
like,
at his job.
He's good
That's,
at his, right. No, but I mean, that's what I mean. It's like, he's good at what he does, and he doesn't want to do anything other than that. That's why he's probably good at what he does, is because he wants to do what he is doing. He doesn't care about it. He doesn't he doesn't care about the secrets of the universe or anything like that. He doesn't even really seem to care about secrets, which is kind of the splitting point here. Is Uldren realizes that Julian won't keep secrets.
No, he won't hide anything. That's not a part of him.
No, and yeah, he's like, right, and near the end he says, as one of Uldren's crows, he flies dangerous surveillance missions, but he is not a covert operative. His capabilities the profound truth of it hits him like a cold wind, because Julian had just said, and I don't keep secrets. And Julian, Julian knows exactly where he was born, to what lineage. His capabilities as a marksman are public record. As one of Uldren's crows, he flies dangerous surveillance missions, but he is not a covert operative.
No.
But he also is like, he's never claimed to be. Like, he is a sniper. Like, he does.
He's been the sharpshooter next to him the whole time. I mean, even, I don't know, this whole thing with Uldren, once he, he's been dreaming. He's been dreaming, recording his dreams. So we talk about Petra having dreams now. Well, Uldren's been having dreams for quite a while, pouring feverishly through the Origin library, searching for confirmation of what his heart wants so desperately to be true. Keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. The future of the Awoken could lie in that garden. There is a wellspring of light on Earth, a blinding beacon that will only grow brighter. The Awoken will not survive, not as they are. Mara's vision and the truth of their origins will be lost, diluted by an anodyne philosophy of the city-born ideologies. The Guardians will kill everything they find. What if the garden is the traveler's antithesis? What if the Awoken can find the garden a new place of balance? And, oh gosh, this word. Equipotential between the darkness and the light. As the light brightens, the shadow deepens. Ulantan, anyone?
Yeah, I was just about to say, like a symmetry. Just real quick, anodyne is a word for something that does not provoke dissent or offense. It's also used to describe pain-killing drugs. So a pain reliever, a palliative, it's something that is dull, tedious, bland, just neutral, 100% neutral. It's not anything that's going to get anyone upset.
Here's something that I love about this paragraph, and I also hate. Uldren has such confirmation bias all over this paragraph. Searching for confirmation of what his heart wants so desperately to be true. He wants the Black Garden to be important to them, and he's trying to find a way to figure out if it is, and he's going to connect as many dots as he can. So we did a whole episode with Purple about confirmation bias and just bias in general, and bam, there's another one, just flat out he's trying to find a way to tie those two together.
Yeah, and you also see too, following that piece, going back to, like, he gets interrupted in this thought by Julian, and you see now the stark difference between Uldren's obsession and Julian's desire to avoid. Or it's not even, it's not, I mean, it is kind of avoidance, but like Uldren is like desperately trying to dredge up every memory that he has about this place. And then you find out that Julian is like trying to forget everything. Like, he's like, I don't want to remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He wants to keep the balance and go back to the way the things were. But once you see, you can't unsee.
And then this is going to mark the transition point in the book. From before to after the fall. So this is going to be, this entry is the turning point in the book. So everything up until this point was at an undisclosed time arguably before our Guardian. Well, yeah, no, it would be before our Guardian had gotten into the Black Garden and destroyed everything. Now we're going to talk about After the Fall, which is basically, it's the After the Fall, and then we have it's After the Fall, Kings, Fanatic, Part 1 and 2, Severance, Fikrul, Docking, Petra, and then Free, Part 1 and 2. And I know we're kind of pushing time, but really, honestly, the big thing here, I think honestly we did a pretty decent job of kind of introducing the summary here. And most people are going to be somewhat more familiar with this part of the lore, given that this is kind of, they did a much better job with this piece in integrating it into the story. So like
the main story.
There's some nuances here and some confirmations, especially in this particular entry, After the Fall, that we didn't have within game. But after the Fall, starting with Kings, it's kind of, this was all kind of drip fed into the story a little bit, much better than we have had previous.
Yeah, Kings it wasn't necessarily, because you don't necessarily know about his interaction with the king of
the
Hell,
docking
the
docking of Craxus and stuff like that. Yeah, like that piece. Oh my god, that piece was such a. It was so powerful. Like if you haven't read this one, I feel like we say this every time, and we probably do. You should read this one. This book really explains where Uldren's coming from. Like
even the Petra one, like he wants to quote unquote save Petra.
Her. He does, and it's just like, even with which I think let's talk about After the Fall real quick, and then we'll go to King. So After the Fall really is just basically confirmation and explanation of the scannable that we found in Warmind with the crashed Awoken ship that I just blanked on the name of.
It's in the Lost Sector on the southern part of the map.
No.
The Galliant?
Galliant, which is the tri-wing interceptor. When you scanned it in the Lost Sector, it basically Ghost mentions that it's Uldren's. Like he's like, but it's got fallen stuff all over it. After the Fall explains why that is kind of there, and so really you see. So we had a mention in Destiny 1 in Grimoire that explained what happened after taking King. He crashed on Mars, and some crows found him and fixed his ship. But then it just he just vanished. Like no one knew where he was going until at the very end of, I believe it was Age of Triumph, we kind of see him dragged in front of the what's believed to be the kings of the Fallen. After the Fall here, this entry explains kind of what happens between those 2 points. So the crows have fixed his ship, and he goes to get back into orbit, and the Cabal basically shoot him down again. And so now he has crashed into the basin. My understanding is that this takes place at the basin, because he's talking about like crawling up the edge of the chasm and all this stuff. And he has basically found a dead crow. So okay, sorry. Clarification point. Crows. When we say crows, up until this point, we have been talking about the operatives, the Awoken operatives. Crows are also a word that are used to explain drones that the crows operate. So these are like the best explanation that I could get is the Imperial from Star Wars, the Imperial scout droids, the ones from The Empire Strikes Back at the very beginning. You remember the big one that's like the one that scans everything? That's pretty much the equivalent concept. Now, as far as aesthetics, I'm not sure where they fall, but as far as purpose, that is very similar.
Aesthetically, they look similar to like little bitty shanks.
Yeah, I got the feeling that they're much smaller. Because isn't there one where he like catches one as it's trying to fly past him or something?
Well, you can pick them up. That's actually one of the collectibles. You take the dead crows essentially in the tangled shore.
Are those what those? Okay, so that's what those drones are. I gotcha. Okay, cool. So he's basically lugging one of these things around, and he's gonna try to use it to fix the ship. And so this is where he starts this is where you start getting the sense that he is starting to have these hallucinations. He attributes them to thirst hallucinations, but there is still there. This is also where he starts to kind of lose it. And understandably so. He's been kind of stuck in the back end of nowhere trying to struggle and try to figure out a way to get back to his people. And all he knows is that Mara is gone. Like, he has no idea what's going on. He has no idea who's in control, how many people are left. The last thing he knew was he got hit with something that threw him. I mean, I will reiterate this, that threw him from Saturn all the way to Mars, which is just mind-boggling. First off,
that's a lot.
That's a very powerful punch.
Does he start rubbing his eyes in this card? I'm gonna do a quick search.
Yes, this is where he starts. This is the first thing he says. There's something in his eye. He blinks and blinks, trying to rub it away, and as he does, he struggles to hear her, to sense that prickle of starlight under his skin. She will tell him he is on the right path. She will tell him she's still alive. He feels nothing. This is our first instance of
him having the...
Which I think, again, going up a couple paragraphs in here, you see, again, the desire, like the rage and the desire for his sister to be back. And then it kind of encapsulates a number of things. One of the things is the obvious chink that allows Riven to get a hold of him. And then also it comments on his view of the Guardians and his hatred of them. And it really boils down to, again, the Guardians destroy things that they can't understand. And the paragraph that I'm looking at right now says, "This world is a carcass now, the scars of the Guardians' passage. Cabal fortresses reeking of decay, littered with flesh and bone and broken armor. The shattered chassis of Vex littering the sands. A place of death and war. A war that tilts on the fulcrum of the traveler, brought upon it by the puppets of that traveler, that fulcrum of war." So, I mean, and again, remember here that the Awoken are all about balance. That's kind of one of their tenets, is that they are created from the balance of light and dark. So to see this from their eyes, this is something that is bringing about an imbalance, which kind of goes back to Green, what you were talking about with him doing research on the garden being like the next future for the Awoken, because he was like, well, maybe the garden is the antithesis to the traveler, which is, then where you get the commentary about, as the light grows more powerful, the shadow deepens. That is this very symmetrical concept. But then again, the Awoken themselves are a symmetrical concept. We do, let me see, I don't think this is where we find, so this isn't where necessarily we find out that he's been basically tricking the Fallen. I think that was actually in Ghost Fragment Fallen 6, if I remember correctly.
In Kings, you mean?
Oh no, yes, it is in Kings. It is in Kings, yeah, when they drag him before the Kell.
Yeah.
Because it makes a comment about like how he had been like purposely just leaving things around for them to find him. No, I think this was double check.
Because the one here in Kings, he's dragged before the Kell.
Fallen 6 is Varix, or Sloan saying that. Never mind. Because there was an entry in which he made a comment about how he left hidden tricks for the Fallen to follow.
I don't think it was in this book.
No, I don't think it was. I think it was. I mean, yeah, Dino in chat, he's agreeing with me. It was an Age of Triumph entry. It's gonna drive me up a wall. While I look for it, go if you want to talk about Kings. I will keep looking for it real quick.
Sure. So in Kings, he's dragged before the Kell of Kings, which is the House Kings, and he basically tells them that what he thinks of him. Petron is ruined, of a ruined house, the lesser of two siblings, bested by Skolas, blinded by Varix, less than Dreg, so Varix is considered less than Dreg still. Squanderer of fleets, last of the Awoken nobility, last of his kind, which granted, we know obviously he's not the last of his kind, but the Fallen, the Kell of Kings is very much so considering him that. But he knows he's desperate. He knows that a desperate man will do things that most people won't. So he tells Uldren, "You can do what I cannot. You broken, beaten thing, you have no pride. So you will lose nothing when you give the word that must be given. It is twilight for the Fallen, and we must lay our banners down." and to the groan and growled protest of its court, the Kell of Kings kneels to Uldren. I bow to thee. It says, for in thy downfall and disgrace thou bearest the weakness we cannot. Thou shalt tell the Elixni to tear off their banners. Thou shalt tell them that we must all surrender to each other. We must give up our revelries, or we will not survive. Wilt thou do this for one dying people, prince of another? And Uldren agrees to it, essentially. He feels it in his heart that she is out there, that Mara is out there, and he agrees to this whole plan and basically thinks that this is going to help him get back to her in some respects because he'll be able to work with the Fallen. Yes, he'll do the thing. Okay, here's my question for you, Blue. Does this mean that Uldren is considered king of Kells?
Well, okay, so loaded question actually.
I know. Because that's why.
Because what the Kell of Kings is doing is what the kings have always done, which is use other figures of power to further their own goals, right?
Yes.
And really what we're seeing here is a political kind of impasse that the kings have because they're basically like, we are not going to bow. Like we can't bow without losing face. But if you were in charge and you told us to bow, then we won't lose face because we're just following our Kell's order.
Mm-hmm.
But then later you see that he is a Kell in name, but not necessarily in actual fact. Because with, I think it's Petra, or it's the next card, basically, he tries to order a captain around, and the captain's like, what, who are you? Like, he basically is like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. And Uldren's like, he kind of gets like this is where you kind of start seeing him kind of become more of the angsty, self-withdrawn figure that we see in Forsaken. To go back real quick, before we go to there, it is Ghost Fragment Reef 4 that explains really the situation right up to the beginning of the card that we just read. This is the card that explains, or this is the Grimoire entry from Destiny 1 that explains that he had spent weeks weaving the illusion that led the Fallen to him. He had left. Mm-hmm. It says he left bits of his trail where they couldn't help but find them. He skulked from planet to planet, Mars, then Venus, then Mercury, then back again, following rumors and whispers. He'd hid from the Guardians, from his own people. He let everything they had built fall apart, while those still loyal to him searched every inch of this forsaken system. Now it was time to stop searching and start building. He would need soldiers who answered to him and no one else, bodies to shape with will and magic and tech to his needs. These would serve. He thought they would take him to a catch, but they were deep underground, not near the Cosmodrome, but it didn't matter. He'd never been particularly concerned with the geography of this blasted world. It was not his home. So he bent his head low and listened to the guttural strings of hisses and clicks issuing from the maw of a would-be king in yellow, a broken ruler of a broken house and the last of his kind. They were more alike than he cared to admit. When the creature's anger had burnt itself out, he raised his head to look at it. He did not need to speak. One Kell rises, and another bends its knees. And the prince felt the little hum of starlight ripple through him, the one that let him know she would be pleased with what he had done. So this is the Grimoire entry that kind of explains that entire situation that you just read in Kings from Uldren's perspective, in a little bit more, which will then kind of take us. So Green, your question here is, Uldren holds the dreg strength that the Kell of Kings cannot come to.
Yeah.
The Kell of Kings cannot do. Like, and it's like he's insulting him while promoting him. Like, it's weird here because you see the Kell say, like, you're a broken and beaten thing, which again, like what I just read, he had done everything to convince them that he was broken and beaten. He had wounded himself. He had cut his own face, all this stuff. And the Kell says, you have no pride, so you will lose nothing when you give the word that must be given. And this is where in game we see Ghost Fragment Fallen 6, which is where the Fallen have started burning all their banners and just disappearing. And so then you see the rise of the House of Dusk. You see, this new house, this new conglomerate of fallen. And then this is where the Kell of Kings kneels to Uldren. And he says, in that, what you were just saying, in that downfall and disgrace, you bear the weakness, we can't. And so he is using Uldren for the purpose of telling the Elixni to tear down their banners. Now, what I kind of get the feeling is happening is they use Uldren to give the order to tear the banners and to surrender to each other. And then once everyone has done that, Uldren mysteriously is no longer in charge. Like he kind of like he's a proxy king that is there for one purpose. Once that purpose is done, the quote unquote true power takes back the throne.
Yes.
And chat's saying that right now. Krask is looking for a scapegoat. Like that's what he's doing. And I mean, he's not even hiding it too. That's the kind of the it's not even irony. It's kind of the interesting thing here is like he is saying that. I mean, the thing to remember here is that he is saying this in front of a full court. Like Krax is the Kell here. Krax is like just completely being like, no, you're going to tell us to do this and then we'll do it. And then, we will survive. Like this is the weird honor sense that you get sometimes.
And then we get into his interactions with the fanatic.
Yes. But real quick, Hex, I believe, has a very good point with the Ripple of Starlight. Remember here that Riven is already present within Uldren. And so Hex makes the comment that, I think that the Ripple of Starlight is again a push from Riven, a kind of positive reinforcement on the path she wants. Another trait that she has learned in many years. She has studied not only Mara and separately, but the bond that is between them. I think that is spot on. I think that is a very good point, and I think that is most likely what is going on with this, at least in this situation.
Right. Using positive reinforcement instead of the constant berating that we see in the cutscenes. Although there's a few moments in the cutscenes where he gets kind of a positive reinforcement from her, but
right. Well, and I think
not often.
I mean, it's very Pavlovian, right? Is
yes.
You do this, you get rewarded. A little light goes on, you're going to get hungry. That whole thing. There is a degree of truth to that, and so especially for someone who's broken and needs, whether or not he wants to admit it, he does need reassurance. He does need something comforting him. These little pieces of comfort that are conveniently packaged in exactly what he wants them to be. Green, you had mentioned this before, but he is very biased in the way that he takes things up. So he's already, he
wants to believe.
Right. And this goes back again to, you had mentioned earlier about like why it was weird that he didn't pick up on some of the nuanced quotes or phrasing that Riven was doing. It's like, because he's already convinced himself that it's not Riven. He's convinced himself it's Mara. He doesn't need to look any further into it. This interestingly enough is the dangers of preconceived biases. Is once you've convinced yourself that something's the truth, you're not going to be open to any idea. Like you're not going to be open to any possibility that it's not. Which does kind of nicely tie into Fanatic Part 1.
Yeah, I'm looking at the bottom part of the card actually. Do you want to talk about the top part? I'm thinking about when he yells out to Mara.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, and that kind of, like I said, it's kind of ties into what we were just talking about with the positive reinforcement, right? Like, she's been silent. Like, the entire thing, like, all this chaos is going on. The light is, like, swelling so much. And I'm assuming that this is taking place during Age of Triumph because that's kind of what was described as what was happening there. And this also explains a little bit why the Reef was so silent after the Taken King and the events that led into the Rise of Iron and all that. Like the events of the Reef burning, like shattered, like it's just explaining like shattered asteroids. The Red Legion is, so this is taking place after Destiny 2's intro. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, I read The Light This Strong But yeah, no, that makes more sense because the light would have returned. So he's talking about like the devastation of orcs and the Red Legion having ripped through the reef. Trog's Broken Legion, which was a D1 event in the Prison of Elders, and then now he sees Petra as this ironic. I find it ironic here too because Uldren has the exact same view of Petra almost that Petra has of herself. Like,
yes.
Petra is very self-aware of herself, and it's just,
as
to
well
me,
as
it's
her faults and everything.
right.
Else
Yeah,
to
it's just very interesting to me because Uldren's like view of Petra is really actually pretty accurate. You're like, with everything else going on, he actually is pretty good at reading people, and like he's really good at like figuring out people's faults, which is probably why he gets away with half the stuff he gets away with. But he kind of is looking in. He's looking in to the Awoken reef from the outside, and he's just kind of noticing all these like just pieces of debris that is the society that he's left behind. And then he, I think, what is it? Oh, this is a callback to the beginning of Maracena, actually.
Yes.
Because he has gone outside of a ship. He is on a a Corvette, the wrecked hull of a Corvette, and he kicks off the wrecked hull of the Corvette. And the reason why this is so kind of significant is this is exactly what Mara used to do before they were the Awoken. She would basically tether herself to the Yang Luwei, and then kick off the ship and like go as far as she possibly could with the lifeline, and then just kind of
tethering her.
Yeah,
which Uldren did with her as well, just not as far as Mara did.
He always got very nervous. But yeah, so anyways, so this is kind of him in a way trying to further reach out to Mara. And I think that's kind of up to where you wanted to take over.
Yes. So he shouts up to Mara, or up into the starlight. Mara, he's come too far to beg now. He's done too much. He demands her answer, which, granted, if you know Mara and Uldren, that never works out because they don't speak to each other that way. They speak in questions. And that's something that harkens back to Maracena again. But let's see here. I'm not angry. I forgive you for sacrificing yourself to save them, but you must answer me now. Am I on the right path? Am I nearer to finding you? And so he's been doing all these different things. He's forced Petra to pull back, consolidate, focus on protecting the citizens instead of collaborating with Guardians. But is he any closer to Mara? Can he trust himself to do this? And he's always wanted to surprise Mara. Now that line there actually kind of makes me really happy because it shows how much that Mara she doesn't disregard Uldren. That's not what she does necessarily. She just, I don't know if she views him as just like the little brother, the perpetual little brother. Huh?
She views him as predictable.
Yes, because Uldren is ruled by his, I don't know, what would you just say, his desires? He's ruled by his wants?
I mean, like, exactly this. He wants, it's a weird dynamic, right? He wants to surprise her, but she knows that he wants to surprise her, so she calculates his wanting to, it's like, it's the age-old, I know you know that you know. You know, like, it's the, where does that loophole end? Because that's a painful one to keep saying. Mara is really good at playing the long game and taking into calculation, like, and you have to be, right. If you play a game as long as Mara has played with the eye as far out as she has, you have to take into account all the nuanced variables, because even it's the age old, like, the butterfly wings on one side of the world creating the hurricane on the other. The very minute disturbance that doesn't seem to be important can over time grow into something that is very devastating. And so Mara is very good at keeping those variables in her awareness and calculating around them. So that's where, like, the importance of information and the importance of secrets for Mara kind of come from. And so knowing that Uldren wants to surprise her I totally see Mara as being the type of character who is like, I know that you want to do this, so I'm going to act like I don't know you want to do this to allow you to continue trying to do the thing that I know you're going to do so that I can make sure that I have that calculated.
Right.
And that has got to be, for Uldren, like, I don't know.
Frustrating?
Yeah, well, it's endlessly frustrating. It's even more frustrating if Uldren doesn't know that's what's happening, because he's trying to be, original. He's trying to be all. It sounds like I'm describing a really bad relationship, where the guy is trying to be really sweet to the girl and she's just really pissed at him. But that's not really the case. But I just realized that's kind of how it feels. Like, he is trying to surprise her and she already knows what he is going to. That is rather infuriating, to deal with.
So the last thing he cries, "Sister, have you forsaken me?" And something answers. And that's where we start to see the actual interaction between Dark Mara and Uldren. Now, you've had the hum of Starlight happening this whole time, kind of that positive reinforcement, but not strong enough to actually talk to him. But here, he actually gets a whisper. And this is Fanatic Part 2, just a quaver. "Uldren, my rescuer." And he follows the voice. He's like chasing, trying to find her, essentially, like a madman. The violence of his thruster bruises his body down from the tumbling corvette to the harnessed asteroid below, where shattered servitors and wreckage of shanks mark the site of a losing battle. Guardians ambushing a fallen party. So, I mean, he's trying to find it, and there it is, a fallen Archon crumpled in the dust. Ether hisses through entry and exit wounds cauterized by brutal solar flames. The mark of the golden gun. Uldren hisses in disgust as he traces Guardian's footprints in the dust. They must have sprinted off together in a rush, no doubt to farm some other site where skiffs were coming down with mining parties. He triages the Archon's wounds. Yeah, I know. Call out to the fact that we just endlessly farm these stupid things that happen all the time.
I just love that.
Yeah. Let's see here. The victim is shaking now, trembling under Uldren's hands. He wants so badly to do something, anything, to ease the poor soldier's passing. To have power, some say his sister had, to save just by proximity. Does he wish it? Does he wish to save this poor thing? He does. His eyes burn with sympathetic tears as he works to bind the Archon's wound.
Real quick. So this is where we see how the ether gets corrupted, because his tears.
He wishes for it.
Well, he wishes for it, but his eyes. Remember the darkness in his eyes that he's been rubbing, and then you were just about to read this, so I'll shut up here and let you read this next piece.
His eyes burn with sympathetic tears as he works to bind the Archon's wounds. His hands are quick and gentle, and he weeps with the strength of his hatred for the Guardians that did this. As tears stain the Archon's wounds, the ether rolling through Uldren's fingers slowly grows heavier, darker, more noxious. He does not notice. Finally, he leans back to smear his knuckles across his eyes. Sore. They're always so sore. Under the unmarked helmet, 4 dead eyes open in wonder. The Archon croaks a word, a broken leftover of a dying hallucination, calling out to whomever he wanted to see, welcoming him to the afterlife. Dad? The fact that he uses dad there, not father,
just kills me. It just kills
Oh my god! The Fanatic calls Uldren father so much during the campaign, and then we just get it in lore as dad. I'm sorry. It makes me giggle, but also like, But Uldren's tears, the whole corruption. Which, do you think part of the corruption is just Riven or part of the Black Garden stuff? Which I know that is a whole nother rabbit hole.
That is a rabbit
theory.
hole. I mean, there's also Trigger is also making the comment like residual from Oryx's blast. Like there's a whole potential like cause of. I mean, I personally took it as like Riven because of the way that the cutscenes make it feel like that's where the signifier of how corrupted Uldren is by Riven, especially with the final scene where you see him with like the pure, like the totally dark eyes, and then they kind of clear Like, it's very, very obvious at that point what is going on with his eyes. And I think that's where, for me at least, that's where I kind of made the tenuous connection. I do see Trigger's point with, like, I mean, he did get hit full blast with a from the dreadnought, whatever you want to call it, from the dreadnought, which does come from Willbreaker. So there is possibly an explanation of like a residual taken. Which, I mean, if you want, you could even use that to explain how if Riven is taken and he's infected with taken energy, there is a connection there, depending on how far down that particular, thought process you want to go. Or, yeah, you could also argue that it is something within the Black Garden that has been festering within him. Though I don't subscribe to that one as much because of the time difference.
Because this is centuries later.
Yeah, this is, or at least
we could assume centuries later.
I mean, it's quite a bit of while. And, if something was festering in Uldren for that long, I would imagine that someone would have picked up on it. Like, either that or like the speed at which this particular I don't even know what to call it.
Interaction?
Not interaction. It's the I am blanking on words. The particular symptom has been like the way, like if you just look at the speed at which it progressed. I mean, like,
right.
He was on Mars. He was on Mars and his eyes itched, and now he's like his eyes are always sore, and that's, to me, that's a very quick progression. So if it was something from the Black Garden, it was either dormant for a really long time, which, I mean, that's also possible. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities, but I personally always kind of took this as this is Riven, especially with the play on, does he wish it? Does he desire it? It wasn't until after he makes the wish that tears started to kind of corrupt and stain. So right. I kind of took this as like, this is kind of the way Riven manifests the granting of that particular wish. Though I do also find it very interesting that there is no phrasing. There's not a phrase trap involved in this particular wish.
Right.
Now, that being said, he could be because he's already trapped. So it's just,
I mean, the phrase traps, if we look back in the Reverie Dawn Gear during the Great Ahamkara hunt, there was not necessarily phrase traps within those either. I mean, granted, Guardians are paracausal, so they can kind of overshadow that a little bit and not get as trapped. But a lot of them seem to just kind of wish it the same way that Uldren did.
Uldren does. I guess that's true. Yeah, you're thinking because of the Great Hunt.
Because I'm thinking of particularly like the one that had the tea party and talking to the mother.
Or
Shinobu. Yeah.
And then there's also Wei Ning's.
Well, who just wants
just going to keep punching it.
Yep. Forever. All right, Wei Ning. You've got a problem.
I love Eric's response to that.
I know.
I just wanted what?
The only thing I wanted on top of that is I wanted Ariana 3's reaction to Wei Ning just wanting to punch things all the time. It's just like the wife off to the side, like, oh my God, just let her do her thing.
Just let her do it.
Oh, it's so good.
So I know we're pushing time, but real quick, Severance is where we kind of get the conclude. So he saves Fikrul, but we don't know really what happens to Fikrul because the next card that we get, or the next entry that we get, is the Severance, and then you see kind of like this is where not the manifestations, but the audio hallucinations are really starting to kind of come more powerfully, and this is also a lead up to the cutscene that we had where he walks into the throne room and burns it down. This is part of the logic of where, because it says basically the audio hallucination says, "Come home. It's time to come home and take your crown." And this is also where we get the sense that he is not the Kell of Kings, because he's on a catch and he goes and he yells at a shank, and I love how the description of this, a shank cast the sound into his ears. I'm like, that's really just an interesting, I love the way they describe that. And then basically he basically tells, them to, set a course for the Vestine outposts, prepare skiffs for he's rubbing his eyes this entire time, prepare skiffs for camouflage insertion. We will put an end to Petra. And this is where a captain speaks up and he's like, what are you doing? We're very happy with the way that the Awoken is, he's like, no, the Awoken are doing just fine screwing themselves up. And then also he points out, if we interfere, the Guardians are going to show up.
Right.
Which, hey, by the way, that's exactly what happens.
Which I'm glad that this whole scene happens, because they're going to go after Petra in this scene. He's literally plotting to go after her.
Well, and it's kind of the it's kind of the gut reaction. Well, okay, so to be fair, he overhears Petra conversing with the Cade, and I'm assuming that this is with the Barons. Actually, I kind of get the sense this is a potential situation with the Barons, because she says the targets are in the crater now. My teams are in blocking position. Whoever you've got, call them in. So this is where we might have a reference to Cade's 6, not Cade 6, but yes, the same person. Right. So this is also where we get that possible tie-in. We don't, to be clear, we don't know that. That's the feeling I had when I read this. But then, like, it's interesting because, like, it's not like he wants to.
He doesn't want to kill her, per se.
Yeah, to be fair, we don't actually get to the end of the sentence, so it might not be that he's saying we're going to kill Petra. It's because we put an end to Petra's, reign or whatever.
Meddling or something.
Yeah. And then, of course,
kid.
And then, of course, the captain. You would have gotten away with it if it hadn't been for you meddling kids.
Mm-hmm. But, gosh, yeah, Uldren gets mad about this whole thing. Insubordination. She would never tolerate this. He plays it off, but he's pretty pissed about the whole thing. A new thing he fiercely wants.
And as he gets a new desire, the itch in his eye resumes. Mm-hmm. So again, desire, and which again kind of was the reason why when you were saying that earlier about the tears, I just get the connection there just kind of hinges on this desire reward component, which to me makes it more Riven than else. Next up, we get we actually get Fikrul. Fikrul is basically, this is the explanation of Fikrul and Uldren's relationship for the most part, but it also explains where the Scorn start really screwing things up for the Reef, because Uldren basically is like, yeah, I'm done. It's like I was hoping to achieve it through the Fallen, but they're not playing the game that I want them to play.
Right.
And so then this is also where he kind of is like, carve out, basically Fikrul asks, what future do you see for the Awoken? And he says, and Uldren responds with, they can die for all I care. And his justification internally was Mara was willing to destroy them for her purposes. The Awoken have no value at all except for in service of her design. If some part of them survives, it will be the worthy part. So you see this sociopathic expansion of what he believes Mara was doing. And I think it's a gross misunderstanding of what Mara was doing, because ultimately Mara seems to be doing what she is doing for the betterment of her people, even though understandably there have to be sacrifices made. The sacrifice, it's kind of the game of like, if I have to punish the few to benefit the many, I will punish the few to benefit the many instead of punishing the many to benefit the few, if that makes sense. Uldren does not see it that way. Uldren sees it as Mara has a plan, and that plan needs to happen, and that plan requires sacrifice, so just sacrifice everyone. And if it doesn't, if someone survives, then, I guess they deserve to be left. Like, it's just like, it's very blunt. I mean, again, very Uldren, right? Mara's kind of the scalpel. Uldren's always been kind of the hammer.
Yes. And then
comes the fun card.
The docking card?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is where Uldren just like, I love the imagery that is like right here, because like this is Krask being docked. So for those who aren't aware of what that means, basically in punishment for things, fallen are like starfish. They can regrow their arms, which is a nice little feature, except as a punishment, anyone who is Vandal or above, if they do something significantly dishonorable, they are docked. And what that means is they basically rip off the bottom two arms of that particular Elixni. And so what is happening in docking, the entry docking, is that Uldren and Fikrul are going to dock Krask, who is the Kell of Kings. Mm-hmm. And basically Uldren then, so the Archon of the Scorn Barons docks the Kell of Kings.
But I get the
feeling
he takes all four arms.
I was about to say, I get the feeling that he took all arms. Which is like he took all four of them and killed. Yeah. Yep. Because in 4 swift cuts, the Archon of the Scorn Barons docks the Kell of Kings. Uldren tears the House of Kings. I see. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know, because like he says he doesn't. I know he doesn't kill him because he says the new Dreg's belt.
Yeah, and it's the kings are dead, like the house,
right.
Which there weren't many kings left. We destroyed most of them back in D1.
Right. Yeah, and Trigger is correct. Yes. Another part of the docking process is that's where the docking caps, which, you know, that patrol mission that you have to run around and kill all those dregs for, those docking caps are literally caps that are put on the nubs that are left after they've been docked to prevent them from growing back. So have fun doing that patrol mission now. But yeah, so this is basically the last of the kings has been put, which Varix makes a comment towards in his book Most Loyal, when you see Varix kind of be like, okay, Krask is pretty much the only Krask is gone. This is where Krask went. Krask is the Kell, was the Kell of Kings, and now he's just he's been demoted to a Dreg. And then after the docking, so after Uldren has taken full control of the remainder of whatever fallen were still following the kings and stayed with him, Fikrul and Uldren part ways. Fikrul goes...
For a little while.
Yeah, for a time. Fikrul goes to reshape the fallen that he can, and then also, quote, drawing certain useful elements, which I read that as the Barons, to him. So Fikrul works and grows the scorn through the corrupted ether that he is now infected with from Uldren, and then Uldren leaves and goes back to the lonely search from Mara.
Scouting with the crows, scouting with a young corsair who wanted nothing more to be defined by her wrath.
Petra.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, I think, Green, you had mentioned that earlier in the episode. This is where we see Uldren actually try to reach out to Petra. And I think he actually speaks to her, right?
So he finds her in Thieves' Landing. What is she doing here? Mara would never stoop to this, trading information with a criminal in the lowest of places. So she's basically Thieves' Landing in the Tangled Shore. And he talks to her. So few of us remain, he tells her. And in that moment, seeing the shame in her, he knows she is too far gone. She cannot be saved. So she's not talking back to him necessarily in this, but she does have an interaction with him.
Right.
And as far as the Scorn and whatnot, whether or not they're actually around, Fikrul is out. As far as the Scorn, do we know if there's much of the Scorn out and about at this point?
No, I think this is the birth. This is the because I think going back up to what I was saying is those are the certain useful elements, because Fikrul is beginning. So it says Fikrul goes to his bloody work, reshaping fallen society the way a hammer reshapes a spider. So
smashing it.
Yeah, I mean, he's breaking it apart. He's forming the Scorn. And then through that, then it further continues and says, and drawing certain useful elements to him. So I think this is where you see the formation, the starting formation of the Scorn, the alliance, if you will, between what will become the Fallen Barons, or the Barons of the Scorn, because I believe the Barons at this point are currently locked up.
That's if the interpretation of Cade corralling them with Petra in the couple cards back.
Right. So
if that's the reference to the Barons, that's not clarified. Just to be fair, it's just Cade and Petra working together, which Cade does mention. There's a mention of Cade's 6 capturing the Barons initially, so it could have been. It very well could have been, and meaning the Barons were locked up at this point. But that pushes us forward to Free, which we are almost done. I think there's only 2 more cards left.
And this
Do you want to talk about Free?
This is where Free is where Uldren shows up at the Tetuans. I'm trying to remember. It's not in the Dreaming City, I don't think, right? I'm trying to remember. I
don't think it's in the Dreaming City, like location wise, where this takes place. But it's Ilyn. Ilyn is the one that is speaking with them.
Right, which is one of the Tetuan. So basically, Ilyn is like she's trying to calm him down. Like I get the sense that Ilyn is like trying to placate Uldren. Like she's like. And to a degree, Ilyn is also almost like a mother figure, really. She's like, she's not trapped. I just hear like her voice being like, she's not trapped. She's dead. Like she's just like trying to calm him down. And Uldren's just having none of it. He's just absolutely not having any of it.
Right.
And it's
just like the whole scene from before where the retinue is just like, oh my God, you're crazy. Except for this time, he's kind of crazy, and they're treating him the same way he was treated before. But let's see here, come to finish it. He's trying. So if he's come, is he at the Tangled Shore, or do you think he's actually gotten back to the Dreaming City?
I kind of took it as being, like maybe at the gate or something. I don't know.
I could see that.
The reason I don't think he's in the Dreaming City is because he says, "Admit that you trapped my sister in the Dreaming City, not." In here, like, you know, it would just be something. The nuanced way of him saying that particular phrase makes me think that they're not in the Dreaming City, but I could be wrong.
And then we have the last card. Sorry, I'm checking stuff on the chat. They take him with full strike team, and one of the snipers, joining Uldren and his jailers at the extraction point, looks him full in the eyes, like he's asking a question. A tall man with a long rifle, narrow, intelligent eyes, handsome. Is he? Did Uldren want something from him once? Something important? Uldren absently rubs his eyes as he stares at him. He frowns, but he can't figure it out. They take him to a discreet landing dock on one of the lower levels of the Prison of Elders. When his containment unit hisses open, the glow and mist silhouette an Exo with glowing blue eyes, and a woman with her weapon drawn, Petra herself. She stands there in silence. He knows she wants to kill him. He knows she wishes him to say, "You've done well." She speaks to you. Her words are curt and direct. What does she say? Uldren closes his eyes and lets Mara's voice wash through him. He is here in the heart of Petra's strength. In the prison she has so carefully tended as everything else falls apart. He is weak and he is bound. These are the strengths his sister never possessed, the endurance of humiliation, the survival of defeat. She says. He lifts his head to meet her gaze and watches her flinch. She holds him in her weapon's sights as she withdraws step by careful step. The Exo steps forward to hood him with a black bag. She says, "Free me." But that is the final card of the book, where Uldren is locked up, and you kind of see some of the different interactions he has with everything. And the saddest part of this whole last card is the fact that it's Joylin.
And he doesn't
recognize him, that Uldren doesn't recognize Joylin, his best friend. Just super sad, tragic, and this book was meant to help humanize Uldren, and I think it does a really good job of that. It also shows how deep into his madness he is, that he's forgotten so much of who he was, that can you really hold him accountable for everything?
Right.
But thus we end a very long podcast.
Yeah. I think it's worth it though, because
I do.
I mean, as much as ultimately a brief summary as this is, there's still a lot of questions out there about the character of Uldren. And I think the other thing is that the important thing to remember with this character is that this is Uldren. We don't know who he will be now that he is reborn as a guardian. We don't even know if he's going to be known as Uldren, to be fair. You know, I think the favorite theory that I've seen out there is that he'll be known as Crow. But, you know, I find that interesting. But the thing with him is, like, this is all, even though Uldren will now have forgotten himself 3 times or 2 times at this point, because he was aware of, for the most part, from what we can tell, aware of himself. Then he went through the trauma of having Riven basically take over his brain in this part, in the Forsaken piece. And now that he's been killed and reborn, he really has no recollection at all about any of this. So this also begs the question of how the Destiny universe is going to respond to something that has been so recently reset. Because now we're not just facing, you know, when it was a Guardian who was dead for centuries, it's one thing, because there's not a lot. I mean, there's no one left alive, right, that recognized that individual. So there's no potential awkward conversations, if you will. We did see some of that with Savin, which is where some of the distrust and distaste for the Guardians that the Awoken have, or the Reefborn Awoken have, come from, is because Savin, this is exactly kind of what happened with Savin, is Savin was brought to the Reef, and his own family remembered him, tried to speak to him, and he had no clue who they were. No recognition. So seeing Uldren now being in the same place as Savin, I'm just curious. And Uldren is a much more prominent figure, right? Uldren is much more well known than a random meteorologist or geologist. I can't remember which one Savin was. But it's going to be interesting to see how people's reactions to Uldren, if we do see their reactions to Uldren. I think this is all good information to have, but ultimately the thing that has to be remembered is that at the end of the day, Uldren, as we see him in game going forward, is not going to be the Uldren that we see here. So interestingly enough, Uldren, through death, has shattered the chain that bound him to Mara. Now the question is Mara going to be okay with the fact that Uldren now has the ability to find out, albeit he's not Uldren. Uldren is going to define himself as not being bound to Mara, but now it's up to Mara to define herself as who Mara is without being bound to Uldren. And the question here is going to be the Mara figure, like Mara's character, how is she going to handle that? Because it's just, to me, interesting that of all the things that are going to be a consequence of him dying and being reborn, he might have finally gotten his wish and surprised her with something that she did not expect. But with that all being said, you want to do shoutouts?
Let's do it. And I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, okay, what do I have for shoutouts? Because I wasn't thinking about shoutouts recently. Let's say I shout out to all the subscribers for the channel, because they are awesome. And those of you who come in and just hang out and chat with us and make live chat so much more interesting, because it's nice having active fact checkers while we're doing this, because we're fallible just as anybody else is. And it's nice to also have a healthy debate going on in chat the whole time. So thank you for showing up live chat. I love you. Thank you for all of those who subscribe to the channel and who cheer us on from the sidelines or listen to us on podcasts. You guys make a lot of this you make it a lot more fun. I like talking lore, but I like talking lore with more than just Blue. No offense, Blue. I like talking lore with everybody. So finding new people out there who are definitely into the story, into the lore, into it in such a crazy way, and have specialties that are way beyond my specialties. Like I love my Awoken. I will study those guys. Scorn, I don't really care about. No offense to the people who love the Scorn. There are Exos, I don't really care about them. Sorry. But each of us have our specialties. So you teach us as much as we try to teach you guys, which is great. And my shout out goes to you guys this week. Blue.
My shout out is very much the same. It's mostly the community, everything. I know this past week there has been quite a few upsets, I think would be the most tactful way of saying that, with a couple of rather large names in various gaming communities. I know I've retweeted a couple of the things with the way people speak to other people. I think that is, for me, kind of a big deal, mostly because I have a 5-year-old who is starting to kind of get curious about, like, he's always been really open to meeting new people. And so I see people react to things like, I mean, I'm sorry, but if you are the individual who can't hold your tongue and you have a negative opinion based off the anything, I don't care, anything of another person, perceived or reality, I really, you really need to take a step back and think about things, because some of the stuff that I've seen, not to get too negative here, but some of the stuff is just, to be blunt, unacceptable. Like, it's just, it's like, just, if you have to insult someone to make yourself feel better, you probably just need to take a breath, and work on it.
Step away and look at why you're angry, not necessarily
the one that is making the rounds right now. Is there is a pretty I think she's a Twitch affiliate. I don't think she's a partner at the point, but I think it's I want to say her name was Sam, I think. But she has made a name for herself by actually recording the things that are said to her and then making YouTube videos out of them. Which I'll be honest, as soon as I saw that tweet, I didn't subscribe to her on Twitch, but I have subscribed to her on YouTube, and I've pretty much tried to ping all of her social media accounts with follows, because I'm like, you know what? It's just I can't, I don't understand that mentality that's required to get that way, and B, it's just not something I can, so this is me just basically being like, if you find yourself in a situation where you feel necessary to put someone down for something, for really anything, just don't. If it feels like an age-old idiom, but it's like, if you don't have something nice to say, just don't say it. I mean, there's no point to it, really. If it's not constructive, if it's not constructive criticism, don't say it. There's no reason. And I mean, there really is no reason to.
A lot of the things that end up happening within her videos specifically is it's while she's playing a game. So
right, yeah. Well, and her situation specifically was when they found out that she was a girl, and the things that were said to her are, I don't know how. My hat's off to her, because that takes strength to listen to the drivel that was being thrown in her face and not break down. Like, some of the things that she had on there were it's disgusting is what it is. And, for what it's worth, I think I've said enough on that one. So yeah, guys, it's really simple.
Be good to each other.
Yeah, just be kind. Or not even be kind. Just be polite. Be respectful. I completely get it. I don't like people, but that's, honestly, if I don't like someone, I'm not gonna I don't curse them out. You be polite, be mature, and just get on with it. Find. Here's the thing. Find something that you enjoy doing. If that's video games, do it. Play all the games you want and enjoy it. But if you play in a game and it makes you mad, don't do it. Don't play it. That's not the point of video games. Video games are meant to be enjoyable, right? That's the entire thing. That's why, honestly, ironically, that's why I don't play a lot of video games, is because I actually find more enjoyment in analyzing them and talking to people about them. I actually don't I don't enjoy playing video games in and of themselves. I enjoy the conversations that playing video games creates. So, that, just find what you enjoy and do it. Do that. So yeah, that's my shout out. It's just keep promoting that, keep being positive, being respectful, and I've seen this a lot, but if you are in a live chat and someone is saying stuff like that, I mean, for all honesty, call them out on it. Like, just be like, hey, that's not what we're here for. Let's not talk like that. You don't have to shame them. Like, don't shame them, but for just really be honest, just be like, don't do that. Why are you doing that? There's no need for it. And so, but I mean, big shout out to everyone who's having to go through that stuff. It's sad that is still a thing in today's world, but stay strong. If you guys ever need a community that you might not know about the podcast, but if you're listening to the podcast and you're here and someone who's dealing with that, know that we don't put up with that in Focus Fire. Any one of our community members in the chat could back me up on that. That's not allowed in any of our sorry
Discord at all or anything like that. Yeah.
I mean, like, we get carried away and we make fun of each other, but we only make fun of each other. Like, I don't make fun of random people. I only make fun of, like, my brother and Green. Like, I'll tease them, but there's a difference between and there's a difference between good natured teasing and actually insulting. And so just be kind, be gentle, be respectful of people. That's all you can do, really. So, but yeah, I know that's a bit of a long-winded shout out, but that's been something that's been kind of gnawing at me for this past week, is just because it's been percolating a lot this week, and it's just kind of bugged me. And I felt like I needed to say something, because I know our community doesn't have that particular problem. So I want to tell our community who is still listening here, if you do know someone who needs a safe haven from that particular problem, bring them to us. Because they can talk all they want, and we aren't going to. That stuff is not permitted, I guess. Our mod team is amazing at making sure that doesn't happen.
For sure.
So that being said, we'll run through our standard outro, and we'll probably stay around for a bit of a brief after show.
Yeah.
With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/focusedfirechat. Links to all our episode archives can also be found at www.focusedfirechat.com. Please be sure to email us at focusedfirechat@gmail.com with any comments or questions for our team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. Also, be sure to check out all the amazing work being featured over on thelorenetwork.com. So until next time, focus your fire, and may your light shine bright.